Good morning and welcome to the June 25th, 2025 regular meeting of the Town of Bethlehem Industrial Development Agency. We are meeting as always here at Bethlehem Town Hall, 445 Delaware Avenue. This meeting continues to be live streamed, but I do want to remind our audience that this is a public meeting and in-person visits are certainly welcome and appreciated for anyone who would like to join us at Town Hall in the morning. My name is Victoria Storrs. I'm the chair of the IDA. Our first order of business is a roll call to order and determination of a quorum. So I will, starting at my left, ask everyone who's at the table with us this morning to introduce themselves.
Brian Connor, Senior Economic Developer for the Town of Bethlehem.
Tenda Barbieri, Board Member and Secretary.
Georgette Stephens, Altamari, Board Member.
I'm David Van Leuven. I'm the town supervisor and I'm a guest.
Good morning, John McPhillips from the Bethlehem Central School District. I'm the Chief Business and Financial Officer. I'm a guest.
Victor Franco, Board Member.
Chris Welch, Vice Chair.
Kate Hedgeman, Executive Director and Agency Counsel.
Richard Kotlow, Treasurer, Board Member.
Jacqueline Hope, Member.
All 7 members of our board are present this morning, so after the roll call, we determine we have a quorum and can conduct all regular business. Kate, do we have any visitors online? I know you were trying to reach our CFO.
No, he did text me. He's not attending.
Okay, thank you for that. So
Not attending.
I'll turn to Dick, our treasurer, for an overview of the minutes approval. I was so excited that we're going to have Dick do the financial report. So we have the minutes of the May meeting before you for approval. I was not able to attend the May meeting, so I won't be voting, but I will take any questions, any changes to the minutes.
Make a motion to approve. Second.
Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
I'm abstaining, so I count 6 in favor and the minutes are approved with all voting members.
Who was the first motion? Who made the motion?
Me.
Okay. Who second?
Me.
Okay, thanks.
Okay, and now we get to the best part of the meeting, the financial report.
Well, I don't know. First of all, in your package that you received, and also we received it prior to the package, the financial statements of the agency, which are current through May 31st, which is quite an accomplishment for our CFO. With respect to the balance sheet, we have substantially all liquid assets of $1.9 million. We have some liabilities, accrued expenses, principally, I would expect the town. And so we have a total equity net assets of $1,878,000. So the agency is in very good financial shape and is quite liquid. Through May 31st, we have net income of $78,000. We had a budgeted amount through May 31st of $73,000. So we're tracking pretty close to budget. Revenues are close to budget, 181 versus 179. Expenses are pretty much in line, a little bit under, and interest income is way over budget. Is way under budget only because of lack of the way that Al does it, basically not on an accrual basis until the end of the year, but as they're earned. But we have significantly more interest we should be earning for the year, close to I would say $80,000.
Is it 80, Dick?
What?
80?
80, yeah. Well, if we got $1.9 million times 4%, that's how I figured that out. There was studying present values, I guess. That's a good conversation. So that's the financial statement. We're in good shape. We're tracking fine. There really are no red flags at the moment. But with respect to the financials, we do have to schedule a treasurer, a finance committee meeting. I have to get in touch with Al because really it's really a preliminary budget discussion. And so we need a projection of revenues, what's going to happen next year. I think our guesstimate with PSEG, and if any of our deals, I think we still have some of our transactions that provide revenue. So we'll figure out what our revenue projection is. Our expenses are pretty much standard year to year, unless there's some member or executive that has any wish lists of things that we need to talk about. I think one of the, Chris, if you have a budget that you might want to propose for marketing. and-
We did, we can talk about
Yeah.
that one here, but we did come up with some
Perfect,
numbers to
perfect.
bring.
Okay, well, that's the new
$5
item.
million.
What?
At 1.3. Went up, interest.
Okay, I mean, if that's the case, we'll review it. I'll get my Doge friends in here.
Your Doge.
And,
Oh, my goodness.
we'll bulldoze that, one
$3.
What?
I love this country.
It's the new vernacular. So, any questions on finance? I think everything's good shape. And we'll schedule the meeting, probably sometime in July. Just pick a date.
Yeah, I figured, once you talk to Al, let me know what works for both of you, and then who else? I think you're on it, right?
Yeah,
And you, yeah.
yeah, it's really Al getting get in our hands the detailed P&L. This is a summary that we get, and really, like I said, looking at what our projection is for revenues. I don't know of any other transactions that would be popping up that would affect that. We have the sign off of PSEG when we get that finalized. And
Yeah, it should be finalized, I'd say, within the next 3 months, but the payment wouldn't be due till January. Because I talked to Al, I think a week or so ago, because he asked me, and I said, oh no, the current payment isn't due for the extender until January. So that won't come in this year, and he said he may have to adjust, because he was accruing it, I think he
well, I
said.
don't know if it's when it's due or when it's earned.
Right,
if
that's
we-
what he was talking
If we earned it, then we accrue it. If it's, I don't, it doesn't really matter the due date for reverend recognition.
Okay.
So,
Well, I guess we won't actually get it until January.
okay, that might not have any impact on the budget. Since our cash flow is not that, we don't have to be that close.
Okay.
That's it. Anybody, anything else? Well, if you have any other questions when you review it in detail, feel free to contact me.
All right, thank you. So we'll move on to item number 4, new business, and that begins with the executive director's report.
Sure. We continue to work on the cost benefit analysis for the Bethlehem Energy Center's pilot, and they are providing us with information and have been pretty responsive, so that's good. I don't expect it to necessarily be on the July agenda. It might be on August, depending upon how quickly we can finish the cost benefit analysis. If we do have a July meeting, which we can talk about at the end of the meeting, we might want to do a resolution for a public hearing, just so that's on, ready to go. And we can schedule that public hearing in the meantime, because that's another statutory thing that we need to do. So that we'll have the comments, and we'll also have the cost benefit, and then the board can reconvene and talk about that, and then potentially put it on for approval at some point. I think we have to really get the pilot schedule itself down on paper as well, and agree, to the numbers and what's actually going to be in it. So it could take an extra month here or there. It just depends. And it also depends on how quickly they get us the information we need in the follow-up request for the cost benefit. So we trying to think of what else. There's really no other potential pilot applications right now that I'm aware of. And we did meet, and you'll hear, I don't want to rain on anybody's parade, but I did meet with governance and marketing, so you'll hear those reports as well. I think that's it.
IDA Academy.
Well, you're stealing his
Oh,
thunder.
sorry. You're okay.
So, yeah, any other, go ahead.
Any feedback about the cost benefit at this point or questions? It sounds like we're just, with respect to the power generation plant, it sounds like we're just holding and waiting.
Yeah,
Right.
they wanted, part of what they asked for is payroll records, things like to confirm the jobs and
Yeah, for
things
the
like that.
Great.
And there was a second round of follow-up. They had provided a response.
Yeah.
And there was a second round of, well, what do you mean when you say this, So Matt Moses, who has been at a few of our meetings, sent me an email last week saying, we're working on it, just so you know. So I think the cost benefit could be done maybe by the end of July. We'll see if they can get back, to us with that. But I mean, at this point, we have the extender, so, I want to make sure that we all have what we need to make that decision.
Do you mind just a quick follow-up? Just we haven't, this is the first time we're doing a cost benefit because it's the first time we're getting a vendor. So when we get it, some of us might be interested in things other than just the exact economic transfer. There might be some other additional benefits that either the applicant would provide or the consultant might recommend or something. So I just want to put that out there that, I don't know what other people are thinking, but, obviously I'm interested in, obviously seeing what the cost benefit is, but also, there might be some additional economic benefits that, like I said, either the applicant's providing. So just, curious to know what people think as we get that additional information from the vendor.
Yeah, I mean, it's not a new project. It's,
Yeah,
so
yeah,
it's gonna be maintaining the current jobs and also
Yeah.
providing energy reliability
Yeah.
and efficiency. It's gonna upgrade the plant, so it's
Yeah.
more efficient. So
Yeah.
those also are the type of things that should be in there,
Yeah,
because we've talked about that with them. But, outside of, retaining the jobs per se, there's not a whole lot of other economic data necessarily available. Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah. And I mean, in this pilot too, the bottom is more than we would get if it was on the tax roll. So there's that tricky piece to all of it too. So.
Yep.
Anything
Thanks.
else? Yeah. Okay.
Are there any updates on the industry study, the industry site review? Anything to share?
I don't. Do you, Brianne?
No, not yet. We have a meeting with National Grid this coming week to clarify some infrastructure availability.
That's great.
They're moving along. That's good.
Are we finished with the?
The short list?
Well, no, that with somewhat tangential to the study, the industrial site study, the pipeline, not the pipeline, the transit lines,
Transmission line?
the transmission lines that we're bringing in that we have some relationship with. I'm just wondering if, with respect to grid, if that's done.
I have no idea what you're talking about.
There's like Niagara, like
Niagara Mohawk.
yeah, like
That's not pipeline?
yeah, right. I think like we're
I'm sorry, I don't know what you're.
That might be the,
CHP?
no, that might be the transaction that we got the money for, that, the utility line.
there were utility lines going through town that we had some connection to. I'm just
We just
wondering.
got
If there's-
payment.
I realize that may
That's a totally different
Yeah.
deal.
nothing to do with grid.
Not on this one, no,
Yeah. Okay.
no.
I mean,
That's
not
an old-
connected to industrial site assessment. I know that.
Right,
I'm just
yeah.
wondering if that project is
I think
if that.
the one you're
Project's
referring to is the Champlain Hudson
Yeah.
Express,
Yeah.
which is a direct current line that's running from Canada
Right.
down into New York City. The construction, I believe, in Bethlehem is pretty much completed on that
That's,
project.
I haven't seen anything.
And,
It's just,
but it's just passing through
yeah, right.
the southwest corner of town.
Yeah.
And the town's only real involvement with that was in the context of the right of way for one of our roads.
Cool.
The pipeline is still organizing some of the necessary construction and ability to do things in the southern part of the state. So they're a little ways away from, and perhaps a little farther away from completion than they wanted to be at this point. But there's some communities down there that they're still not fully working with.
It's a very complex project.
It's, yeah.
So, but for the industrial sites, what Brianne's looking at is if there's sites that don't have water, sewer, electricity, we're trying to see what it would take to get it there. That's the one she's talking about.
A board meeting was on this.
What about, last week we talked about the planning, current
The
condition?
zoning,
Yeah, the
zoning
and planning.
updates.
Yeah, is there anything you can share with us today, or?
There's nothing new from the last time we spoke about. There are updates to zoning being reviewed at every planning board meeting until they get through them all. Then they will be proposed to the town board and go into their final status. So still looking at towards the end of the year.
So one thing that I think the IDA as sort of an economic activity generator, we often get calls when people who want to build here, and I know at least once someone has said, well, I don't want to move until the zoning is settled, and we're now, and it's complex, I understand that, but
It's more than a year past
It's
when we
more than
hoped
a
it
year
would be done.
past.
Yeah.
yeah. So, we're doing our best when we do get those calls, to be upbeat and positive.
That's fair.
And it's not fair, excuse me, it doesn't apply to every single parcel. Okay, so absent any other related issues, the committee reports?
All right, so the governance committee met on June 3rd. We discussed revisions to 3 different committee charters, the governance committee, the finance and audit committees. Those revisions have been included in this meeting package. They include a hybrid of the current existing version, as well as recommendations from the ABO, as well as recommendation from our council. So with all those kind of giving it more meat to the bones, if you would, we passed those out of committee to present to the board for a formal vote so that they can be adopted. So I don't know if you want to take that vote now, Madam Chair, or wait to the end of my committee report.
What I would like to do is, certainly for the finance committee, let the finance committee take a look at it, since we'll be meeting in a month or so. And then we would bring that to the board, having had that chance to review marketing. I think you might be ready to do that in governance. It sounds like you are,
Oh,
so.
we didn't do marketing.
Okay,
We did auditing. Yeah.
Short form, I would ask the committee chairs for each of these committees to say, yes, we feel comfortable voting today, or let's have a look at it during a committee meeting and then come back.
Okay. Governance committee stands ready.
Okay, so we'll have that vote after the rest of your discussion.
Thank you.
Are you all right with the audit committee? You had input into that already, so I thought.
Yeah, I didn't see anything of concern. We're not meeting probably until October, November, December in the fall. So I didn't have any concerns, so I'd be happy to vote on it.
I'm on the governance and finance. I think we did editing real time during the governance meeting, so that I was okay with it, but if you have any suggestions, I'm happy to incorporate whatever you recommend. But we did some real-time editing during the meeting. I did.
So I haven't combed through it deeply. I recognize the parts that are new and parts that are there, but I will defer to the finance committee chair. If you're ready to vote on that today, then let's get that done.
Excellent.
And the plan for marketing was that we, when I met with John and Chris, they gave me their thoughts. And Georgette. So what I was gonna do is put like a preliminary together so that the next time governance meets, we can do it, talk about it.
Okay,
Yeah.
beautiful. So speaking of which is good segue, the next governance committee meeting will be on Tuesday, July 1st at 8 a.m. Same bat location. For those of you old enough to watch Batman in the 60s.
That's Tuesday.
Yeah. So basically during this meeting, we're going to do three things. We're going to review the procurement guidelines. We're going to develop a policy on remote meeting attendance, and then start to incorporate and digest the feedback from the marketing committee to create their inaugural charter. In terms of upcoming events, part of the governance committee responsibility is just to remind board members of various opportunities for training and different board enhancement opportunities. So the New York State Economic Development Council is holding their annual Summer IDA Academy in Ithaca, New York. That will be July 29th from 9 a.m. to 4:30 p.m. At the downtown Ithaca Conference Center. I'm going to be attending. The ABO requires any new board member to attend at least once for their training. I go every year just because the topics rotate. It's a great opportunity to network. It's a great opportunity just to learn things and bring it back to this board to incorporate latest procedures and guidelines and up-and-coming things. So if you are interested in attending, please let our chairwoman know, or Kate know, and then we'll get it. I'm going to go.
Okay, great.
So yeah, so that concludes my committee report.
I just want to go back, because maybe if I recall, I asked you earlier, but maybe we should just check. I thought that each board member is required to have some training every 2 years. Is there a requirement there?
There's an ongoing training requirement. It's an opinion by the ABO after your initial, what they call the Paris training.
Okay,
After the state training, they want you to have regular training, throughout the year and or maybe 2 years. I don't know where that's coming from, but
But it's not required.
Yeah.
The initial training is
It's not
The
required.
subsequent isn't.
okay.
Yep, I believe that there is a refresher course that the ABO offers online.
Yep.
That
Right.
really focuses on fiduciary duty. But Victor, as you reported to us, actually at the Academy last year, and I was presenting at one back in November. When you go in person, it covers a lot more of what we actually do on a day-to-day basis. And you're absolutely right about the networking. There was a terrific group down in Westchester in November. So for Victor's travel, naturally the IDA covered the cost of the registration, and we also provide meals and lodging because Ithaca is not a day trip for most of us. So any other board member, we would be working that out of our travel budget, and under our travel policies, you get covered.
Well, I have a question.
sure.
So I took this training when it was here,
Mhm.
but I wasn't here. Does that matter? I guess
Oh,
that's
you
my
mean
question.
you weren't an official
wasn't.
board member yet?
I wasn't a part of Bethlehem,
Yes,
so
you
I
Right.
don't have to
right.
take it twice.
But I
Right.
took it
I
when
get
I was
that
at
question a
Albany.
lot.
Yeah. No, it's,
Yeah.
you're good.
I would go, but I have to be somewhere else. I got to be in Dallas.
Yeah, that's fine.
Probably dying from heat.
I've
Maybe
read
cooler
it's
there.
much cooler.
Maybe
Yeah,
cooler
exactly,
there.
John.
You're getting acclimated right now.
Yeah, my blood thinned out. Yeah.
Yeah, there are other opportunities, and we'll continue to hear about them as the year goes on. And also, as someone who has presented, and I did this as Stores Associates, not on behalf of the IDA, or you would have known about it, The panels and the in-person meetings are typically comprised of other members of IDAs, often they're regional, but those end up being some of the best sessions. And so as we get more involved in this, I would certainly be very, very willing to support members who want to make a bid to, get in front of those people and actually do some presentations about our experiences.
Really good.
Does anyone have training materials? It's great. I love that we're talking about training opportunities for board members. I'm just wondering if we have like materials from past, like if you went stored materials from past IDA training academies, or the summer academies. I just want to see sort of what the materials.
Well,
provided
when
with
I
that.
went to the summer academy last year in Binghamton,
Yeah.
they didn't hand out materials per se.
Okay.
You know, it was more of a presentation from
Yeah.
various IDAs,
Okay.
Q and answer, and then that was it. There was no like materials.
Okay. Sort of like the other. I've been to other EDC meetings. Or they're sort of more like that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, the only thing I got was the annual economic development handbook that they
Okay.
put out.
Okay.
That's about the only thing I got
Thanks.
From EDC?
from this training
Oh,
when it was here in Albany. But it was a vendor, it was handed out. It wasn't a part
right.
of the presentation package.
Council Harris Beach.
They
does.
Yeah,
just give out
Harris
that
Beach,
big book.
Yes.
which,
Yeah.
Yeah, they had a stack of those at
the
Cooperstown.
Bible.
Yeah.
I'm starting to get a stack of them. Not much changes from year to year,
No.
so maybe the next meeting I will bring in, and if yours is dated 2024, it might not be the end of the world.
Sure.
I did find that it's online in a PDF, so if you don't want to keep the Bible around, you can
Oh,
reference it.
but I'm always looking for something to dust.
All it really is, Ted, is a quick debrief of the public authorities law. There's nothing, the Bible, that's all it is. It's nothing earth shattering. That's probably not on Westlaw, I guess.
The glossary is very long. So.
Yes.
So, okay, is it in order to have a motion to vote on the 3
Yes.
revised charters?
If you want to do an omnibus motion?
It's up to you. Why don't you do them individually?
But
it's up to you.
So as chair of the governance committee, I'd like to move to accept
It's
the
really not.
revised charter for the governance committee.
Second.
Thank you.
So I will ask for a vote on accepting the revised charter of the governance committee. We have a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Are any abstaining or opposed? Great. The revised governance committee charter is adopted with all 7 members voting yes.
I'm happy to motion for the audit committee.
Good.
As a member of the audit committee, I'll second that. And with a motion and a second, I will ask the members, all in favor of adopting the revised audit committee charter, aye.
Aye.
Are there any abstentions or nays? Okay, the revised audit committee charter motion passes to adopt it, all 7 members in favor. And
Okay, I make the recommendation, we approve the finance committee. I motion that we approve the finance committee charter.
I'll second.
with a motion and a second, I ask the members to vote on the revised finance committee charter. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any abstentions or nays? All right, the finance committee charter is, as revised, is approved. All 7 members saying yes. Thank you.
You bet.
So,
I have some other business.
Well, Chris has got to give his,
I'm sorry.
and then of course,
I thought you gave it.
no, it's exciting, so
Yes,
listen
yeah, super exciting. So,
Way more exciting.
More exciting than
Finance.
governance? Oh, yeah.
Yes.
So I thought we had a very productive meeting last week. With our whole team, and benefiting from Brianne and also from Melissa from New Ward. We spent quite a bit of our time talking sort of about the purpose of the committee, coming up with some guidelines around what we want to put into our charter. A lot of stuff around consistent strategic brand identity, increasing awareness and visibility of Bethlehem's assets. One of the things that I think is really important is contributing to the development of a deal flow pipeline so we can bring in additional deals to the board. Providing unique strategic marketing tools and messaging that help differentiate Bethlehem from competing economic development options. We talk quite a bit about sort of becoming the one-stop shop. If someone's coming to the town of Bethlehem to approach for a deal, that they would initially work through us and then through the Economic Development Office. So we talked about a bunch of that. We'll have some of that to bring together at some point. I just sent her this stuff this morning, so hopefully for maybe for next week we could get something for you and I can work together on the charter.
Yeah.
Okay. We talked a bunch about brand guidelines, how we want to define what Bethlehem is, how we want to define who we are. You know, obviously talking a lot about our infrastructure, but also I thought Joaquin and Georgette had some really good ideas around specifically bringing in data that we don't have now in terms of cell phone data. I don't know if you guys want to talk a little bit about some of that.
Market study is
Market
what we
study.
discussed.
Yeah, at least, you had suggested the market study, and then we use cell phone data to help. You can do it by parcel, you can do it like just the town if you wanted to, and you could say X number of people drive by the street, drive by this property every day, demographic information about who lives in the town, education information. It's really scary but super useful about how much they can really drill down. And you can do it again by parcel. You could, if there was a cluster of industry sites that we were looking at, you could geofence them and do some interesting things. So we talked a little bit about how we can then help try to sell some of that.
Joaquin, did you want to just talk about the market study that you used as an example and how it was used? And
Yeah, so I think I've had the opportunity to utilize these market studies to do various things. To Georgette's point, cell phone data, transaction data that happens, those are like legs to the stool. And the overall market study will tell us exactly what people are doing when they come to town. I think it's often enough in the political social world, we hear from the loudest group of people who say what they want, what they don't want, but the reality is, what do people do when they're here? How do they consume? Where do they want to live? What kind of stuff do they want? Which I think from the IDA's perspective and for economic development purposes, it pretty much draws a clear picture of what the opportunities are in the market. And so,
and what we don't have that we might want to.
Right.
and what we don't have that we might want to strongly consider,
Leakage.
and leakage as a town. And so, we've done market studies from the housing standpoint where you drill in on a specific zip code. We've done this market study stuff for, usually it tracks advertising spend. So you can see where advertising spend is being spent and what's the reaction to that. And then you couple that with cell phone data, you get real accurate information on consumption and where things are going. And so,
Yeah, what is the percentage? Is it 80% city town residents, or, how many what percentage of visitors, what are the top destinations in the town? Right, like I think you know, but you really don't know. Yeah, it's really in real time, like at least we're like 3 days behind, right? Like that's it. And so you can try to start tracking trends to year over year. It's really interesting.
and I think from a IDA perspective, marketing wise, when someone comes to the site or the economic development site, And it could be a manufacturer, it could be a property, or, a residential or commercial developer looking at, okay, what's the opportunities in the town? They get to see the population density, they get to see what's going on. And they can make a considerable decision on if this is a place they look to invest in.
So I'm not too familiar with market studies. What's the shelf life for such?
That's a good question. I think I'd say 2-3 years. I mean, it's just a snapshot of what's happened to, Georgette's point. You get cell phone data for a couple of days. So you can kind of see that stuff. You can see potentially where people are participatory in like their information. Like, oh, I bought these tickets. You can see when people make transactions what the zip codes are. So you can track that back to and from. And so, but it also overlooks what the businesses in our community are doing, and where do those people live and work.
So, and that's an evolving document, so that gets like updated in real time?
I think that's
is there
an
like a
agency
rough lag?
decision. I'd say
Okay,
every 3 to 5 years. It's like you do it with the strategic plan, right? So
Okay.
if you say you're going to do a strategic plan every 5 years, the marketing study should happen alongside that strategic plan.
right,
So you're not building strategy off of opinion.
yeah, right. Yeah, because I just, given the fact that you're going through the site, inventory and then the rezoning and everything like that,
Correct.
I don't want to do a market study, have a shelf life of 6 months,
Right.
and
No.
now the data is
Right.
no longer good because it's still not online yet. Okay, but if it survives 2 or 3 years,
Yeah.
it'll be okay.
But I mean,
I'm sorry, no, go ahead.
I was gonna say, if you drive around town, you see stuff happening, and if you talk to enough people, they would probably tell anybody like, yeah, there's stuff happening, and you pull the investment or the zoning and the planning plans, you can kind of see where the town wants to go.
Mhm.
Then it becomes a question of, okay, well, who wants to be here? And I think the market study gives you a nice macro view of what the potential opportunities are. And, that can be picked up by franchises. It can be picked up by not just investors and developers, but people who want to service the town.
Yeah, in addition to that, the way, and this is the pattern I think we've picked up on is, developer A comes into town, gets control of a site and says, I want to do this. And we're
Right.
like, yeah, that doesn't fit there. We don't want that, whatever the case is,
Right.
where you can use it to say, if it's this site, we'd love to see X, Y, Z, and it's backed up by data.
Correct.
That might be a good fit there.
Correct.
And that can help them recruit the right
Tenants.
tenants
Yeah.
as well.
Well, that makes
which
a lot
is
more
a
sense.
different-
Yeah, that's the application of
That
it.
makes
And it's the same thing with industrial sites. I think when we get to further into the study and actually wind up with a presentation to the board, that there might be an industrial site or two that we want more data on as well, that could help, drive a specific type of manufacturing or, to that area. So it's really to inform the Economic Development Office, and we are part of that, we're a tool of that, to be able to better steer or give people who want to invest in Bethlehem the idea of what the data shows and lay the zoning over that, and the whole wetland thing, we'll see how that works out, but with the lawsuit. But, I think it's something that you could undertake as an agency for the town. And, I think when we left the marketing committee meeting, we were talking about the next step being an RFP for that type of study, if you were so inclined to do it.
In a marketing study, I mean, Bethlehem's got great dirt, transportation, infrastructure. Would we integrate other marketing studies with other communities to show where they can live, where they can go to school? I mean, it isn't necessarily that we would draw, from my perspective, you guys can disagree, we would draw business into Bethlehem because of they want to live here. We want to draw business into Bethlehem because they want to locate here. okay, because of the other attributes.
Mhm.
Right,
Because,
Right.
and when we draw in other marketing studies from other municipalities to show somebody, hey, you come here, you got great infrastructure, great transportation, and look at all the surrounding, places where your employees can draw from. Yeah,
yeah, it's like, and I've heard Josh say this a million times, but it's as simple as almost that cluster, right? You have a project that comes in and it's kind of by itself, and I can think of one in Albany with one of my other clients right now. There's nothing else there helping
To
it
support it.
and supporting it. So, that's the kind of thing where you have to be more strategic. And I think that when you have this data, and downtown has used it, you kind of say, okay, this seems to be a corridor for X. Or if we could get two of these folks to invest, now you've got something bigger than just the original. In general, I'm not a huge fan of studies for obvious reasons, and I know you come from government, so it's like another study, but it has not been done. It was an interesting idea that came out of marketing, to use as another tool. One of the things I took away from the last the EDC meeting we were at in Otasaga, which sometimes, I'm kind of the content, it's hit or miss, but the larger IDAs, and they're mostly county IDAs, but there was a presentation how they had site control and they sat pretty much almost 5 years, right? Like 5 to 7 years. And then were able to bring it all together. It was an industrial type manufacturing. And it was shocking in that now they've got this whole hub of, very similar to Vista, in that that's a tech thing. This was more of a manufacturing, industrial use. And the IDA pretty much pulled it all together because they could apply with the municipality for grants from the state. They had the pilot programs and the tax programs, and they really were able to develop something that was going nowhere fast. And, that I think if you want to be proactive in assisting the town in recruiting, then this data would be helpful to that. And I think that.
Yeah, I think one of the things that we sort of came out of it with, I thought, was a really good sort of progression, which was the cell phone data is something, and you made the
It's
point very well,
scary,
Joe.
but
It's scary,
it
but
works.
but we all have opinions about what's going on in town, and we're all very passionate about some of them. And we actually don't know about some of it. So I think sort of in terms of creating a progression, if we did the cell phone data first and we actually understood some of these things that we don't currently know, that guides us more into what is our identity. Like, are we really the bedroom community that sometimes we think we are? Or do we have more people coming in than we don't know? What are we not aware of? And I think, in terms of that progression to let's identify the identity, let's then, do a market plan around that. I think that's a really good idea that I thought you guys had.
Yeah, I think it's a great way, when you look at this data, a lot of times it's only broken down by county. And so being able to get to the town level or a couple sites specific, it really changes that information. And it's really accessible and intuitive to pull, or if you don't know, they help you figure out. You can be like, hey, this is what I'm really trying to get at. What reports should I be pulling? And they'll work with you to pull them. So it originally was like a site location tool for Home Depots and Lowe's and like big box, right? And figuring out where is there missing pieces. So they do that, but they also, we used it for COVID recovery, but it's really helpful to say, these are the 3 main routes into the town that people drive. Here's, what percentage are going to work out of this town versus coming in. It just is information that you'll be surprised at the answers.
And I think the other piece is that it could potentially help the town as well in terms of like a new business comes into town, we're worried about the traffic flow. We can do a before and an after and say, what does the actual traffic flow look
Or
like?
what retail are we missing and need to go after to try to get to come to the town?
Yeah, I mean, there's a couple sites off the top of my head that really are waiting for a tenant. And one of the projects that came before us in the industrial zone that basically withdrew their application was really about, they didn't have a tenant yet, right? And so there's other commercial spaces and things in the town where, I mean, ShopRite is one of them. Like, they've come in 3 times to talk to Rob and I and to, see what could go there. And, so I think if we had some data, that could drive some development they're just sitting on things and they're vacant and the grass is up to here and I gotta make phone calls. But, yeah.
It sounds like this is just discussion at the
Yeah.
moment. We're not asking, there's no.
Well, I think we thought if the board was inclined, we could pull together a potential scope of work and a RFP, because Georgette has done it, right? So that was the thought.
I don't think we need a specific motion on
No,
hearing a consensus.
No.
It's interesting. David, any thoughts?
I think it sounds like a positive direction to go. I like it.
I've written strategic plans, I've implemented strategic plans, I've done the data before this kind of tool was available, and, having come at that from both ends professionally, I like the idea of getting the data first.
Yeah.
Before you decide what your strategy, your targets are.
Yeah.
And that can be very hard to do below county level previously.
Yeah.
But that's way better than having a strategic plan that you throw away because your data told you something different.
Yeah.
But to Dick's point, Albany County did a strategic plan, it was now about 5 years ago. So I don't think that's been redone. So that's
They just released their economic plan though.
a new one?
They released it, probably the Advance Albany within the last year or two.
Okay.
I haven't seen it.
I go to their meetings, when they have them on Zoom and they haven't brought it up yet. But yeah, I mean,
Maybe not just say released it, but I know they
Secret job.
completed one.
yeah,
Yeah.
Like the county IDA or the county.
No, their economic arm,
Yeah.
Advance Albany.
advance all, yeah.
Advanced.
And so
It's a secret plan.
My
Yeah.
guess is they're really, really busy and it probably got pushed over here because of all the things that are going on with St. Rose and all
No
kinds of stuff.
kidding.
Well, we can try to find that because I think it's good to know what they're thinking about.
Sure.
And I think
Suppose.
CEG has a lot of the workforce development numbers.
Yeah.
And data, so they would be a good, right, so if we're saying, hey, this is the community, your business, but here's where you can draw from for workforce, they definitely have a lot of that information. So we don't need to recreate that piece.
Well, yeah, and we know someone at CEG.
I just saw John yesterday.
So what I would, to Victor's point about data getting stale, when the committee talks again, ask the question, how do you make sure the data doesn't get
Get
stale?
stale, yeah.
Because it could in a matter of 6 months or a year. What's the timeframe?
Mhm.
And I would be interested in hearing, responses that addressed, let's get up and running the things you want to know, get everything in place, and then possibly, and we'll update it for you on X basis.
I think it's good too, we're putting a lot of pieces into place that are new, so having a baseline before, the industry analysis comes out and some of the marketing we're gonna do, like, it's always good to know sort of our starting point versus, measuring the success of some of these things that
Yeah,
we're
that-
working on.
That brings me to my next thing is, define and quantify success. Like, I've done enough marketing projects where, success is a amorphous blob.
Yeah, very nebulous.
Memberships, we've talked about the idea that we'd like to increase our presence at various meetings and events and such, and possibly spread the load amongst all us fine folks. So perhaps, if people are interested in going to a meeting and representing the IDA, that would be great. We can talk more about that. I was very happy with the conversation with Melissa from Newark. She was great.
She's our web person, just in case, just for a reminder.
And then we'll come back to this. Storytelling and reference businesses. So if we have a couple of referenceable businesses in town that we could call on to give us a great mini case study, go through a process to develop a media-ready profile for that.
We talked about the micro enterprise.
Yes, yeah.
Recipients and tying that into an announcement that hopefully we'll have another round. So yeah, those I think were specific to the micro enterprise recipients.
And then the final piece I wanted to bring up is we talked about having a late summer, early fall event, potentially bringing in some folks from various boards and having sort of a social event to talk about who we are, at least internally to the town a little bit. And perhaps something we talked about because John wants wings at Normanside.
No, so
That can't be bad.
just to elaborate on that, one of the things that, and I know some of you see this all the time, as do I, is that disconnect that happens. So we thought, the IDA is a tool for development, and do we know who's on the historic preservation board? Do we know who's on the planning board? And do we know, and that, yeah, so we thought, huh?
Bike and pedestrian.
Yeah, whatever and that, as we look to, when you approve your deals, well, what would historic preservation think about that? And what would, so we thought, and I haven't seen it really done anywhere. I don't know if you have, Victoria, in your municipalities, that maybe it'd be a nice thing to get all the boards together to just talk about things. We probably should have a more nailed down agenda than that, but it wouldn't be all business. But the point is, if a project, for example, came to us on the toll gate or something, and that's in the historic district, like, we don't even know the people on that board, and what are they thinking? Everything's kind of done in silos. And, I thought that, and of course, every time you approve tax benefits, the school, district is part of that. So that was a thought that came out, and or doing a, maybe a partnership event with the Chamber of Commerce and local business, sort of a town hall of, what are you thinking about? What do you need? What's it like to do business in the town in this climate? That kind of a thing. I don't know if you want to elaborate on anything that we ran. I got it. Okay. All right.
I just, I think it's a good segue into something that I wanted to bring up.
Okay.
Now, I sent a note to Kate, Victoria, and Chris about, about having somebody from the county IDA or a better person to come in and discuss the plug project with us. Now, I understand that that's not directly our project, okay, but it's in our hood, and we should be able to articulate what's going on in plug. It's because they look to us, and it's exactly what you're saying. Even though we're not the sponsoring IDA, we should really have a good foundation understanding as to the status and what's going on there. And I thought that we should have someone present to the board at a board meeting like we did in the past of what's going on with plug and what's the status. And there's a lot of questions out there in the marketplace about the project, and I think it's good that we would have that education and that knowledge base.
Did they ever respond to you?
I do know that it was received because in the correspondence section of the IDA meeting, it was referenced that they received correspondence from the school district. And I only know that because a business review had reached out to the communications department asking if we had received.
What did you do? I'm sorry.
So given the warn notices that Plug Power had issued, the district had sent a request for information to both the Albany County IDA and the vice president for Plug Power, asking for certain pieces of information. Number of layoffs, titles of those layoffs, where those layoffs were distributed not only within the Vista Boulevard site, but the other surrounding sites within the capital region, any recapture provisions associated with the agreement, and how things lined up with the original application. Just to get a sense of, okay, where were they in terms of their job creation and retention benchmarks over the course of the past 3 or 4 years, but I have not received any information yet. Actually, I'm in conversations with council in terms of whether or not the next step is an official FOIL process for that information, but I have not received anything yet.
Okay, these are the sort of things that we should be
Yes.
aware of
Yes.
as a board.
Well, John and I spoke with it offline and it's confidential, so it wasn't my place. He's sharing it, so that's fine. It just, but no, I hear you. I agree with you. It may be, we invite someone from Plug, not necessarily the county IDA. I think, that information probably should be foilable. So if you need it, if you'd like it, then you probably should, yeah.
I'm sorry, I just had a takeaway from our marketing meeting. So one of the conversations that came up was, I'm sorry, were you guys finished with what?
Yeah, I think,
Yeah, I
Yeah,
think that's
okay.
a great recommendation.
Yeah.
For us to, right, I mean, no one's they're probably not going to the county IDA, they're coming to us or the town and saying what's going on, so I agree with
well,
Dick's.
I do know, and I think I mentioned this, that the last Advance Albany meeting that I went to, right out of the gate when the WARN notices went out, Kevin O'Connor had told the group that at least for the first couple years, because of the construction and the project, that those numbers had been met for that particular period of time. And that going forward, and their policy generally is that you have to get within 20% of your goal. So he said going forward, they won't know until they know. You know what I mean? As time goes on and the layoffs either happen or they don't, how close to that 20% or hitting that exact number. So for right now, I think what he was saying, and I understand, is that there wasn't really anything that would be clawback actionable. That was my interpretation of it, at least at this snapshot in time. Going forward might be a different story. But I think as a neighbor, if people are willing to come over from Plug, then that would be great. Are you okay with that, or? All right. So do you want to reach out just to Plug, or do you want to have Advance Albany involved, or?
Do we
want to reach out in an official capacity, or are we talking about more like a reach out? It sounds like the school board reached out in an official capacity and is hearing crickets.
Personally, my personal preference is to be informational, okay, not be adversarial.
Right.
We're not going out for the clawback, because we have nothing to claw back.
No.
But we, just so that we as a board understand what's going on, so if we're asked questions, we're not saying, we don't know it's the county's issue. That's to me is not an appropriate response.
Is that how the school board was feeling too, that they're,
The original request was just for information, right? So to us, it looked, at least to the school district and school board specifically, the number of layoffs seemed to be significant given the investment to date. And we just wanted to get okay, where's that distribution? And with regard to the recapture components, we just wanted to know what the terms of the recapture. We weren't necessarily moving forward with any plan. We just wanted the information to say, this is where you were supposed to be, this is where you're at, this is what the agreement calls for, so we could consider next steps if next steps were appropriate.
I don't, from my experience seeing all type of IDA pilot documents, they don't get that specific. The real capture of the jobs is at the end of the year with the, is it the ST form. And even we don't necessarily get interim job numbers. I think when we look at the application and we look to governance and to go through all our recapture policy, we might drill down a little bit more. This IDA may, set some things down, but I don't know that that's something that the company would have to self-report, which is why we asked for it. But if you take what Kevin said at the Advance Albany meeting, they did look at it, at least up to that point, and were confident enough that to that point we were okay, but it was a question mark going forward.
So I think those layoffs are effective today, actually.
Huh?
I think the layoffs were effective June 25th.
Right, like you gotta wait and see, like,
Right.
yeah. So, I mean, maybe it's an invite, not only to discuss, maybe that's not the lead, maybe the lead is, hey, what's going on at Plug and what are all the great things and for the future that you're planning and, how are the layoffs affecting that, and sort of ask some direct questions about that. We probably could elicit some information if they're willing to come.
What kind of time frame would you look to have that conversation? And recognizing that we're heading into the summer season when it's almost impossible to schedule a meeting.
And then I guess that, just to piggyback on that, usually we cancel one of the summer meetings just because there's no business. So it's usually July or August, and with Bethlehem Energy pending, probably not going to be ready for July anyway.
Yeah.
But if you wanted to have, if Plug was amenable, you could do that for July, but that's up to you.
So is it just Plug, or are we also Vista Tech Park generally, right? Like this, right, like, because we have the shop, right?
It would maybe be helpful to wrap them a little bit in you're the anchor in one of our most important industrial assets. Our marketing committee is getting going. We're looking at studies. Come in and
Yes.
talk to us.
Yes.
That'd be great. That's,
You
the
mean
more
the
the
whole,
basket, the better.
Right,
mean
because
all
if
of us,
there's not the 1,600 jobs, right, close to that, then what effect does that have on, like, why would you locate?
Right. Yeah, and it was anecdotally, the businesses, the retail businesses at the front of the park were experiencing, some pickup. I found it interesting that Mint is open for lunch, which Garden Bistro hadn't been able to do for years.
Yeah.
So hopefully that will work out. But it's a legitimate question in the context of what we want to do for marketing and promotion of
I
the
think that
community.
makes a lot of sense.
I think that'd be wonderful if we had all this stuff.
Yeah, I mean, that would be the tone, that's all I'm saying.
Yeah.
I don't want,
Yeah, M&T and ShopRite, we can have all.
So if that's the tone, then I think July is too soon, because I'd like the marketing committee to be able to take away everything that we've
yeah,
talked
we need some
about.
stuff.
Just get that frame around it and maybe think of August or September.
So are you saying you want a Vista party? Like, do you want like all or do we just want to maybe one by, I mean, how do you, I mean, there's got to be some approach. To your point, I think is what you're saying is how are we?
Yeah, it's,
If
they're
you're thinking
these,
about it for marketing, then it needs to be a Vista party.
well, who else in Vista would, I think that you could justify, you're the anchor tenant, you got the bulk of the jobs, you're driving the strength of the retail. We want to talk to you first. We don't want to have you in the same room as the nail salon and have them asking questions.
Right.
that
Yeah.
Are legitimate, but are not our business.
Right.
So
I
start
guess I
with
was
that.
thinking more Columbia Development and,
Yeah,
Yeah.
no, that's a little too broad.
Yeah.
Okay.
I think we want to make more of a BR&E, a business retention and expansion, what's going on with the anchor tenant.
Okay.
Tell them what we're doing that we weren't doing when we first met with them, the day the shovels went in the
What do we do?
ground. So, create a little bit of a back and forth, and that's why I think that, reaching out now for something in July, might be too soon.
Agreed.
And we can pepper them with, to the extent the relationship develops, try and get at some of that information that is not being provided, but that is really essential to, to the town.
But they would have been one of the people that I think would have made sense to approach for a reference anyway, so.
Yeah. Yeah, so.
So where do you want to leave it?
That particular issue.
Yeah, like what marching orders are you giving us?
Why don't you, I mean, this is a recommendation. Yeah, time is irrelevant, so why don't I suggest October? You know, why not give yourself after summer? It's not gonna go away unless there's an issue that mushrooms sooner, but I think to do it right, the marketing committee can meet and, schedule it later in the year. I think that's my recommendation.
Just the social part or also the marketing study part? Because I think we should do them, I think we should.
This is the
Yeah.
one thing, I don't,
The plug conversation.
the plug part, I don't, you guys decide the
Yeah,
social
I think our
part.
hope is
I
that
don't
we
drink.
have recommendations for the August meeting on
Yeah.
who to move forward with on
Yeah.
this.
So the RFP would go out
Yeah. I never see
relatively,
any stuff, I gotta do that.
And we have a meeting, I forgot, it was a couple weeks.
Oh,
yeah, we put another marketing on pretty quickly so that we could follow up
Mhm.
after.
I mean, before an RFP, shouldn't we have a little bit of context and budget discussion?
Oh, yeah. What I think,
You just gave us the budget.
I didn't give you the
it was
budget.
actually 1.9.
For wings.
Yeah.
Gold wings.
No, what I think we I need to get, and if either of you have seen an RFP for this type of, and the scope of work almost, like what are we asking for? I think that's the first step. And then putting a budget to it, definitely. And then we would put it out, or at least we'd have to know like ballpark.
Well, what are we willing to commit? As a board, what are we willing to
Right,
commit
right.
to a study?
Right. But I think you had said it's not a lot. What we talked about numbers. What did we say? I can't remember.
The cell phone data was like 15 grand. Was I think what you said, Georgette, somewhere in that neighborhood.
Well, it's based on your town size, but
Okay,
they're also negotiable.
okay.
I think they're just trying to get you in.
It's a lot of money.
That's a
So
lot
it
of money.
was maybe 12,000 for the year. I negotiated 14 for 2 years. And you can definitely work with
I don't
them.
even know what a cell phone
But it
study
is like, you can get in every day. You have a customer service representative that you can set up weekly meetings with.
I have no clue.
They track your IP. Your
So
phone
if
is
you go over to Price Chopper,
it knows,
your cell phone data knows where you are.
Okay,
and that's public information.
no, I don't have roaming, right?
So, but that's what it is. That's how it works.
Yeah.
So that's how you track consumer trends.
Right, like
With-
pickleball is really hot and you're generally around 10
It is
a.m.
apparently,
Yeah.
Yeah, we're getting a lot of visitors from outside of town going to the pickleball court.
Yep.
And we're selling them nothing, they're just getting a free
Right.
service.
And if that's
kick,
true,
Okay,
then maybe you can get a pickleball into the shop right.
For example,
Yeah.
in the winter months when we can't go outside.
And go pickleball and rock climbing.
Or when it's this hot and you can't go outside.
You can't go outside.
So before we get too far off.
Yeah, sorry, you had interrupted
Well,
you.
it tied into everything we just talked about. So I talked to a couple folks at ESD. And I wish he was here to hear this, but they are just as open and willing to come to any of these things that we do, especially when we have the study. And, obviously, our regional office is entirely busy with, we are getting, the capital region getting significant support from the state of New York for ballot. So they have a lot going on, primarily in Albany, but they are just as interested in doing stuff with the city or the town. especially, you know, if we're going to go out, get research data, market data, and start putting a strategic plan together along with zoning and our industrial studies. So they are very interested in supporting initiatives here and coming to be a part of the process.
What does that look like? What should do we reach out to them? We're running up on time.
Good thing is I'm on the regional council, so that helps. But I do think that any of these social gatherings,
Connect with Mike.
yeah,
Just
Mike's
make sure to.
Mike's ready to, you know, whenever we're ready, he told me, he's just like, you know,
And what would that look like?
I think it's up to us, right? I think how we want to approach him, he's willing to support. I think the question is, what do we want from them?
Right.
Yeah, I think they probably want to know our industrial site stuff,
Yes.
the challenges of the infrastructure. Like, I think that's where a lot of their grant money is going towards now, of how do you
Mostly
get
capital.
power, water, you know, to these sites so that they're really shovel ready. I think that's probably their biggest goal, but I think the other thing is right, the state is, you know, she keeps on announcing new projects, and they're looking for sites.
Yep.
So they also probably need to know our sites so that when they're meeting with people, that they could direct them to us. So I think we maybe need to be a little further along in the
Yes.
industry, you know, the site selection study, but
Yes.
they definitely have lots of grants to get stuff to your site.
And DRI still keeps getting refunded. Right?
Yeah, I mean, we
Refunded?
always have
It's
trouble with that one just because,
We're not a low income community.
yeah, and, you know, we don't really have necessarily any blighted property per se. Even the vacant ones, everybody makes them nice. It's Bethlehem.
Right. Your neighbors do it.
It's like this weird, like,
Yeah.
that's been vacant 30 years, but it looks nice. Yeah, so,
Given all that the marketing committee has already accomplished, I somewhat reluctantly ask that you create maybe a wish list that's got a calendar of when these things that we're talking about could reasonably occur based on what's going to be achieved, and then start putting some numbers on there. You can look at the financials. We collect our fees to use them, yes, to run the organization, but really to keep the town growing.
and we see this as a way that it's valid use of IDA funds to promote development in the town. Because we're limited in what we can spend IDA funds on. So. All right.
Okay.
Anything else? I think that was your big one. I had it written down. There was one other I thought.
There was a couple others, but one is extremely controversial, and the other one, we'll wait until next meeting.
Okay.
Go to the order. It may be helpful just for the board, if I could share some information.
Sure.
So the school district is in the process of an initiative of rezoning elementary schools within the footprint of the Bethlehem School District. Sort of tangential in terms of what we were talking about with regard to marketing. There's certain elementary schools, particularly Glenmont and Eagle, that are at capacity given just the current enrollment numbers. Interestingly enough, enrollment in general for the district has decreased about 20% over the past 15 years. We do anticipate that it's going to be relatively flat and level over the next 4 or 5 years based on our enrollment projections from the Capital District Regional Planning Commission. They're usually spot on in terms of the enrollment that we actually have in the district. We're under contract with Tyler Technology over the course of the summer to sort of take a look at, okay, where are the catchment zones presently? Where are students, mainly K through 5, situated within the various boundaries? We do anticipate there's going to be some shifting. Slingerlands and Ellesmere in particular are below capacity. It creates some equity issues, both in terms of the instructional environment where you have some classes at 14, 15, and we're other ones at 19, 20. So we're trying to be sustainable and equitable moving forward for the next 4 or 5 years at least. Certainly an impact to district transportation, families. When we first put up the map, at one of the meetings, everyone was looking.
Grandfathered in, right?
No, they won't be grandfathered in only because, well, it depends on what the recommendations may be, right? So this is all about numbers in terms of, okay, there have been instances where, there's a sibling, like you don't want to necessarily, split siblings. We've been in this district for the, K through 4, can we just finish out, grade 5 and then move? So those sort of nuanced conversations will occur over the course of the process. We anticipate having a recommendation to the Board of Education late fall of 2025 for implementation for the 26-27 school year. This way, there's an opportunity to communicate, public conversation and the like. It is interesting just seeing where those catchment zones have increased. It sort of makes sense just given, Glenmont and Eagle, the development that has occurred within the boundaries of those 2 catchment zones over the past 5 or 10 years. There's not presently an expectation to increase building size because the enrollment numbers in general do not necessarily warrant that. It's just really redistributing the population within the school district boundaries to those elementary zones that can accommodate it. So happy to keep the IDA informed of that. I just given the the nexus of the conversation with the marketing and what you're doing, there's obviously an impact based on the individual elementary schools and the school district on average.
Thank you.
What was the 20% decrease, good or bad?
It was organic. I don't think it was attributed to any one particular.
No. Was it?
Well, it depends on how you look at it, right? I think it translates to lower class sizes.
Right.
And more
Decreased costs.
not necessarily decreased costs, right? Because and that's always like what you would expect, but the two are inverted away in terms of cost.
I would think it's somehow connected to the inventory of houses that turn over and
So
where they turn
here's a
over,
very
right?
interesting piece, and I appreciate your time here, but capital district regional plan, to my earlier point, is usually spotted. I mean, between 1 or 2 kids in terms of what the enrollment projections will be for a school district for any given year. I mean, they're really good. The kindergarten class for 25, 26 is markedly lower than any of the expectations. And that's just not for Bethlehem. I've had conversations with Gilderland and some of the other capital region schools. They are much lower than anticipated. And there's a question in terms of why. I think part of it's housing in general because folks aren't willing to give up their mortgage rates at the sub 2s for a rate that's significantly higher. So I don't think the inventory is changing hands as frequently as it was, let's say, even 3 or 4 years ago. Couple of the fact that prices in general, even when you looked at the town's initiatives in terms of mixed residential, those prices are still high for folks coming in, younger families with kids that are just entering the school system.
I think
It's,
also.
there was talk especially in 2020, there was a significant nationwide drop in the birth rate.
Yeah.
That just about tracks, and the capital region planning is almost certainly looking at like Department of Health births. Because I've seen school enrollment studies and that's a big factor. So the question will be, is it a temporary dip? I know that you guys have been looking at, is there a recovery? One thing that I see, because I do demographic analyses similar to this, is the shrinking household size, which makes sense. I'm in the Slingerlands district. There's not a lot of room for new build. When you go from 3 kids in a house to 1 kid in a house, you're not going to get new ones without a redistricting, whereas you're actually adding housing in some of the other areas. So I think this is something we all know.
And Victoria, seniors are moving.
That's right.
And I mean, that's the
Get
thing.
out of here.
I got nowhere to go. I mean,
Well, that's,
You wouldn't be afforded, that's the point, you can't just
That's the
afford go somewhere else.
yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
it just,
For what we have, and, you know, if you got a mortgage like 10 years ago, like I did, like, please, people are paying rent that in the
I was just-
hamlet. It's like, really?
I was just looking at housing prices in Cape May, and where I'm going on vacation in a week and a half. Like, yeah, no, not retiring there,
No.
or even, other more traditional places. I think the ability to arbitrage between a high value house in New York and a lower value house in sunnier climes, that arbitrage opportunity has been diminished as the southeastern states and southwestern states have become economic powerhouses. The prices are rising.
Yeah.
And we did this deliberately because you're not going anywhere.
we're stuck.
well, I've got my next house, it's 6 feet under.
Oh, geez.
All right, I mean, I would like to adjourn the meeting.
Promotion.
So,
Right,
all right.
my real estate's already paid for.
We're gonna, you know what, Chick, this is so bad. I was gonna say we were gonna put you in one of those, what are they called, those huts everybody
Oh
was
my
like
gosh.
upset about? We're gonna put you in one,
The tiny
Jort,
homes.
the Jort,
yeah, that's where we're gonna put you.
by you,
The yurts, yes.
yours, they're by you,
The Jorts?
yeah.
You know, what about universal pre-K? I know they funded it,
Yep.
but
right,
did
it's
they find a
operational.
vendor?
So it is funded partially.
Like a place to have it, I guess.
Yes, so we have two vendors presently for our 25-26 school year for a total of 96 UPK slots. TSL Adventures has room for 72, 74, somewhere around there, and Child Time has room for 20 or so. We opened it up to registration, and fully registered. There's not a wait list presently, so anyone that had registered had a slot. We did a lottery for that. It's a bit challenging because the state caps the per student rate at $540 per month for a 10-month program, and the cost of running a daycare per child is more than $540. So there's funding from the state, but it's not really fully funded if you speak to a vendor that provides child care services. So what those companies usually do is they usually supplement with the wraparound care on either side to sort of make that work from their book perspective.
I know.
All right, good meeting.
Yeah, so the last thing that I think we want to touch on is the next meeting. It sounds as though some of the things we've been talking about, and especially getting a draft cost benefit on Bethlehem Energy, we're really talking August at the earliest. So what I would propose is, we develop at least a preliminary consensus on which meeting to hold, July or August, and then go through, maybe a doodle poll to confirm. Unless everybody absolutely knows which one they
Good
rather.
with either. I gotta vote for the
I
county.
won't be here for July, but I might not be here for the August meeting either, so that's really not matter.
I'm open, either one.
I'm leaning toward August because I can't make September unless we reschedule. I don't think I can make it. But let's on a preliminary basis say August, and then people respond to confirm that.
Right. As that will be the one to skip, is that what you're saying?
To hold it in August,
To hold it.
skip July, we're
Great.
likely to have a more robust agenda in August.
Great, yeah, that's great.
Well, I mean, may I make a suggestion that if it's gonna be August and we have a conflict of a day or two, maybe we can change the date.
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's absolutely. I have to say, having been on the board when we met on Fridays, even in the summer, we moved to Wednesdays because
Yeah.
of
Yeah.
the difficulty of getting people in
Right.
on a Friday in July or August. But Yeah, we can certainly do that.
So,
So August is currently the Wednesday, the 27th. Do we need to change that meeting?
you know, it-
Do we have everything?
It's late enough, like, I think the later, the better, so
mean,
I
school
think,
starts the following week. So-
yeah, I think we should keep it. And if there's a quorum issue, that's different, like, we can move it around. But it shouldn't be any sooner than that, I guess is what I'm saying.
Yeah, I won't be here, but.
So on a tentative basis, the 27th, if we can scoop up an extra member or two by having it say on the 26th, we can find out that information. We'll go for late August. And with that, I'll accept the motion to adjourn.
Second.
Thank you.
all right.
All in favor? Any abstaining or wanting to sit here longer? All right, the motion to adjourn passes. This meeting is closed at 9:28 on June 25th. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
I was taking a new picture, that's why I was slow.
Oh, okay.
I'm